Okay, we're officially starting the final community dinner. This is Craig's day 21 of 21. I can eat, breaking a cleanse, or breaking, break the ice, getting married, you break the classes together, all that stuff, breaking. So I have this whiteboard thing here. It says endings and beginnings. And so we'll share a little bit about that on the talk. And why should you even watch this? This is Health Alchemy. This is a community dinner with some beautiful people over here eating dinner. And for all you recording people, then this is really about learning how to start what you finish. Finish what you start, both ways, for me. So that was on the whiteboard, I have this thing that says guiding light. So for me, I had at the end is the check-in, is the follow-up with the clients, is the feedback, how did I do? So I got a few clients that will check in and we'll take some photographs of the eyes and tongue. We'll talk about what was satisfying, what was not, where did you meet your goals or not. And there's a little checklist we're going to go through. So we'll go into a screen share in just a moment here. And we'll look at a few things together. Ending the cleanse. This is an old PowerPoint that is on the cleanse folder. And this is the ending cleanse PowerPoint. And so, are some of you happy to be done? I actually feel better when I cleanse, and then I get diluted, and like it says, the desires, temptations, the self-judgments, whatnot. And every time I've done a cleanse, it's like squeezing a sponge, and then part of me doesn't want to go back. And usually one habit falls away. And it's one of the little secrets about cleansing is that I'm actually kind of trying to change people in some way, because usually when people cleanse, they get clearer. And when you get clear, you realize, I don't want to go back down to the La Brea tar pits of delusion again. In whatever small way we decide not to do that. And my personal process involved many, many years of being addicted to wheat. And every time I'd cleanse, I'd want it a little less. And I cleansed a little more, I wanted a little less. And further down this PowerPoint here, there's a really interesting, Gunther Enderlein was his name, and he had a theory of biopleomorphism, and that the milieu or the terrain is more important than the bugs, and the milieu causes the change or the mutation in the bugs and the intestines. I studied some HIV researchers back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was a macrobiotic, and these macrobiotic researchers, one thing they found about their conclusion after 10 years of studying thousands of AIDS patients was that it was an internal mutation. And that really, for me, really solidified Beauchamp's terrain theory right there. So for me, when I started studying what I call the hygienists of the mid to late 20th century, the hygienists, some of them were very extreme. One guy, he said, you keep doing enemas, water enemas, until they come out clear. And that just horrified me, because I tried. It was like 3 or 4 later, it was still coming out with muck. And I was like, oh my God, how much junk is in there? And I started to see photographs from Bernard Jensen's work of this people have incurable skin problems, and then they do the clay psyllium drinks and the parasite herbs and the enemas, and suddenly they'll pass 10, not suddenly, it's more like years, but they don't talk about that in the testimonials. It's like, oh, suddenly, But after months to years, then this stuff comes out of people. And I know personally, what's come out of me, I wouldn't wish on anyone else to be inside them. Serious stuff. And I want to go into it right now. But once that was out of me, then this Gunther Enderlein's theory is that we go to a higher valence of existence, because the parasites aren't holding our soul down in the earth plane with their desires, making them think they're our desires. And that's what I call the vagus nerve highway from our gut. We get seduced, the bugs somehow convince us that their cravings are ours. And he says we go through 3 major conceptual evolutions in our gut. And the symptoms are really interesting for each one. There's a mucorracimosis phase, a fungal phase, and a bacterial phase. And they're all fascinating how the human gut evolves with the soul, if you could put it that far. So I like the word freedom is found in freedom too. And I still have fun and indulge, but the one question I want anyone that's listening to this, when they start eating normal foods again and going off of, let's see, do I have that up? Not yet. I don't have that up yet. Yeah, here it is. So you start adding stuff in, like you might start frying some food again, or you might start eating late again. I got an F- on eating late. I had a dinner every night from 9 to 11 p.m. I've just been so busy. So a cleansing rule, Craig failed F- on eating late, but that's just the way it was. Drinking water, you might drink less water, or just say screw, you might have a cup of coffee, or you might have some ground flour foods, which if you're gonna add anything to be the last thing, folks, it's don't add flour foods right after a cleanse. They're so congestive, so mucus forming, so inflammatory beyond your wildest dreams. If you took your white blood cell count an hour after you ate a bunch of flour foods, you would see, it would horrify you. It would go up 20 to 50%. It would horrify you. It's like, wow, my own gut is making white blood cells because of what I just did. And that's a lot of resources in chi your body wants to do other things with. So don't do it. You know, dairy, you know, you break a cleanse of cheese, probably, you know, raw milk cheese might be okay. With what is cheese, and so cheese and nuts kind of go together in my world. And if I'm going to eat them, they're never eaten alone. I don't know how many people are eating cheese and all by itself. It's like, why don't you throw a cork in your intestines and then hope you're going to have a bowel movement? Because that's what cheese by itself is.
Cheese and nuts.
Yeah, they're like, so Bernard Jensen, again, there were some great teachers that came along in my life, and I never met this guy, but his teachings were wonderful. And one of them was the antidote, if you will, for cheese and nuts is radishes and or greens, and the more spicy and you know, sour, like a sour green would be a chard or a spinach that sort of dissolve. It's a little bit dissolving because of the oxalic acid. So the Chenopodiaceae family, goosefoot family, generally that's beet greens. So if you have some grated beet with some grated radish, then that's a great dissolving remedy to anti-constipate the body. And then the other factor with nuts is they've got to be fresh, because you're dealing with polyunsaturated fats, omegas, and they don't stay fresh very long. And that's a major problem of liver inflammation, gallstones, gallbladder problems. I cannot tell you over 20 years how many gallbladder cases where I look and I see a bowl of nuts sitting in a bowl on the, you know, the living room table for months on end, just refilling it. And, you know, maybe the ones in the bottom been there for 3,000 years, and it's like got, you know, King Tut's little autograph on it or something, you know. Just, I've seen some really old nuts in my time, you know. Just, well, look at that nut, it's growing hair, you know, like, geez. So, yes, be a little careful with nuts. You're ending a cleanse. They better be. We were talking about pine nuts earlier. So, the pine nuts and sunflower seeds, I think, are two of the most, they go rancid the fastest. So once you get a sunflower seed out of the shell, man, like those go raw ones are so nice, but they'd better be sealed. Once you open that seal, man, you don't have much time, maybe a couple of weeks at most. They're so delicious though, those go raw sunflower seeds. Oh my God. And by the way, the sleeper in the go raw stuff is the go raw watermelon seeds are the highest seed protein I've ever seen outside of flax. So it's a huge sleeper for a vegan protein source. Yeah, huge sleeper, beyond what I thought, even better than hemp seeds, because hemp seeds for some people are like loose bowel central, you know, soup too. Well, let me finish because I gotta get through this. Grains and beans adding back is a fairly decent thing. Like I might go to Dharma's and get their khichdi, which has generally been a super fun favorite for 20 years of mine. Although I like to put butter in mine. Anything in a package, you know, like looking at packaged foods as, you know, like how fresh are they? Oh my God, that cookie in that package, how old is that? When was that thing put in the package? Twinkies. I actually did a Twinkie experiment. I think I left it out for a number of years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a number of years. Yeah. Yeah, and then there was the Big Mac thing. Remember the Big Mac meal, whatever. Oh God, that thing was out for a year. It didn't even change much. Scott Sawyer told me about that. And then one I'm going to pick on just right here, adding back, is if you're going to make nut milks, folks, make your own. They take 5 minutes. Really, you know, water and nuts and maybe some dates and a little bit of coconut oil, and, you know, double boiler, melt it, blend it up, and you can make your own theme nut milk, and it's got 1,000 times the nutrition of the stuff you're buying in those packages. Worthless. Return on investment. Remember, we talk about that. You're putting 10 units of energy in, packaged milk's giving you back 1 unit. It's a 9-unit loss. Poor return on investment. But a fresh homemade almond milk made with love will give you back 15 for your 10. So there. You get a 5-unit return on your investment. That's right. All right. Back to So when you're ending a cleanse, I think the most important thing is were your goals achieved? And that's where I'm a big fan of the SMART goal acronym. So did we set SMART goals to begin with? And do we even look at what that is? Or did we challenge ourselves too much? After sitting in men's groups for 20 years, one of the worst things I can see is you set yourself up to climb Mount Everest and you don't have the tools. And then the shame starts. Oh, see, I'm such an idiot. I never do anything right. And it's like, well, maybe you're trying to climb Mount Everest when you should try with that hill over there first. You know, maybe instead of doing 5 enemas, maybe you just do 1 easy one. You know, maybe instead of fasting for 7 days, fast for half a day. You know, like attainable, realistic goal. That's 2 of the acronyms in the SMART. The A and the R is attainable, realistic goals. So that's sometimes why we need a coach to kind of, you know, sergeant to kick our butts a little bit. I don't need that because I got a guy kicking my butt 24/7. I think James over here understands that too. I mean, I got this guy in my screen, my ears, and my kick your butt out there and surf. That's what it feels like. And it's like, who are you? Like, oh my God. But I got to deal with him all day, every day, you know, so he's a great, powerful guy in my committee. Another one to check in with the cleanse at the end, this is what I do is, did I have any extra emotional reactions, body, mind, you know, throughout the cleanse? And then that's why there's a level 2 challenge called taking personal inventory. And that personal inventory is one of my favorite exercises. You set I have a random timer called Randomity on the phone. You set a random timer and it goes, boop, it goes off. And mine says Song Ha or Hong Sa. It's a Yogananda thing, a city yoga thing. Hong Sa goes off. And then there's 4 questions you ask yourself. What was I doing just now? What was I thinking just now? What was I feeling just now? And was I conscious or not? I did this 20 years ago, and it's you get about 100 data points, and then I got to actually objectify how conscious I was. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm only 52% conscious. What the fuck? Excuse my language, FCC, but oh well. You know, it's like, because I made a claim that I was feeling pretty conscious in my day-to-day life, and then when I do the random timer, it's like, I was unconscious again. It was triggered again. Sleep at the wheel again. So some of us might judge ourselves more harshly here. I judge conscious as if I'm making a choice, I'm conscious. If I'm in a trigger or I'm reacting, then I'm unconscious. And often we don't find out that we're unconscious until we become conscious. I call it snapping awake suddenly. Wow. I used to say to myself, the peace I'm seeking is only a moment away, because I know that grace can come at any moment. And that to me is the greatest thing worth praying to is grace. Because if you're not awake, I don't care how enlightened you are, your tools are worthless. Your tools are worthless. If you're not present to this moment, I don't care who you are. Your enlightenment is worthless. Because you're living in the past or the future. You got to be here. So reactions is really important in ending a cleanse. And when I cleanse, man, I'm reactive. I'm just a reactive. Everything. That's why I didn't fast much this time, because it's pretty challenging to maintain a cleansing during the fires and the co-blab. I'm just going to say it, brainwashing. I don't say COVID anymore. I say co-blab because that's what it is to me. Blah, blah, Charlie Brown. You know, just stay away. I don't want to listen to it. And so I found this time around that my devotion to my process and my guiding light was to change at least one person's life for the better during this cleanse. Did that happen? Yes, I'm really pleased, and I have a blog about that we'll go through in a second. Where are we at? 750. Okay, maybe not too much. And then observations. What changed for us? Where did we go numb? Where did we go into OCD, PTSD, anxiety? Generally, when pieces that are stuck in us start coming out in our intestines, there's usually an old trauma associated with it. And I don't know how many times I would meditate through, something just came out of me, and then a memory would come out with it. And how many times doing body work, especially on women, where I hit a point and have a woman go, wait, hold out there for a second, hang out for a little while, and have one woman tell me that, oh my God, I just had a memory of my uncle groping me when I was 8 years old. Come to the surface. So how many of those do we all have? Horrifying amounts, probably, but you know, but that's why we cleanse. Is you shine the flashlight down the dark holes, you know, like, oh, what are you doing over there? Come on out, you know, let's give you some love, man. You know? In the story of my life, 1,000 of those holes so far, like, oh God, come on out. You don't have to hide down there anymore. It's crazy. And I still have PTSD about a lot of things in my life, but that's what's made me a better person, is seeing PTSD is nothing more than consciousness's fascination with an experience. In my investigation of meditating through PTSD of many things, is really getting to the bottom of it was, wow, this isn't done recycling in me because what keeps playing it is fascinated with it. So to spirit, it doesn't matter. It's a movie, and I'm not done with the movie yet. So you that thinks you're controlling things, shut up because you're not in control. That's the whole Zen, that's the Zen aphorism. The Zen pointer is you're not the doer. So I follow up with, so stop taking credit for what already happened. You didn't let go. You only aligned with what already let go. You didn't teach yourself how to go to sleep. You aligned with the process of going to sleep. That was already happening. And there's a whole piece around that. Like the peace that we seek is always and already here. So if it's always and already here, how do we enlighten ourselves away from that? It's very simple. But we get seduced away from the simple because of all the delusions in our world. One teacher says, we're like fish swimming in the ocean thinking we're thirsty. We're all fish in the ocean of spirit going, I'm thirsty. That's the ultimate delusion. I fall for it 1,000 times a day, at least. You know, but that's the point. You cleanse and you get a little clearer, and then the cleanse is over. I'm like, wow, I'm a little more clear now. I'm not going to make that choice again. We all know what we're talking about. We don't have any youth in here, really. Yeah, we got some men of various emotional youthfulness here, you know, but we're working on it. And then there's process of the summer, the emotion of the summer, the birthright emotion, I call it, is joy. Generally the summer, that's the emotion of fire. Meaning has too much joy and sadness is not enough. So that's the process of going through a cleanse. And for me, the guiding light was, what was my guiding light was helping others. And so being in a position of service means I'm more of an example than I ever was. My 25-year-old would be horrified at what he became because he liked to hide and never be in the limelight. And suddenly 30 years later, this guy's looking forward going, oh yeah, look what I became. So it's tough being in the limelight sometimes because I would like to have a pizza and a beer and go to sleep and talk football stories every now and then, but apparently there are some teachers that still do that, so maybe my humanity will return in that way. I'm going to move along now to, the blog page. That's what we wanted, right here. So a few minutes of humor and then we'll end the talk. So ending a cleanse to me is you don't want to go back. The faster we jump back into our old habits, the worse we're going to feel. So the metaphor is you squeeze the sponge and then you throw it back in the dirt. Like, really? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, so every time I have tried that process, because I've done at least 100 cleanses, at least 100 times fasting, is, okay, now I'm going to just let myself follow my cravings. And, you know, when people were starving in World War II, especially in the concentration camps, and those who ate too soon died. And that's the same thing that happens when you cleanse and you go back and you start eating bad food too fast. I've done it. I gave into the cravings via, it was the munchies from pot. I'm done cleansing, you know, smoke a joint, hang with the guys, eat too much. And then, you know what? I felt horrible for 3 days. It was like, oh, I just wrecked my cleanse. I threw the sponge right back in the dirt. I just wasted $300 in a month of my life. And so for me, that's what I call a deathbed game moment. I started this game 20 years ago called the deathbed game. All my major decisions are based on it. I am not going to my deathbed with any regrets. No way. I'm dying clean. I can die clean at any moment right now because I don't have regrets. And that's really important to me. So when I did those mistakes, I did my penance for them. I went back and cleaned up the mess because it was a consciousness mess, ultimately. Why did I decide to sabotage myself, right? And that guy just needed love. In the end, I just had to learn to love myself because when we sabotage ourselves, we haven't forgiven something out of our past usually. That's why I brought out that book, Reflections on the Christ Mind. Oh my God. Reflections on the Christ Mind changed my life. Little 3 to 5 page chapters for the ADD brain. You have to go on, you know, a little exercise to work on, all kinds of versions of forgiveness. And it's self-forgiveness. I forgive myself for doing this and this dumb thing. And because I used to say to myself, you fucking idiot. They used to come out. Brutal to have that kind of self-violence, to live through that. So it took a lot of healing to get that saboteur digested, and some hugs, you know, like when the bonobo monkeys, when one of the male monkeys is going crazy, two of the women grab him and basically hump him until he's happy. I'm like, yeah, good model, you know, like, hope the guy get happy again. He's kind of out of control. I don't know if that would work in human society, but boy, it's good fantasy. So endings are important as beginnings, because each ending, as I've seen, if you do any kind of gardening, if you lived long enough, you see, like, right now we're in the season where the fruit's coming to fruition. This is what we call the earth element in the Chinese cosmology, Chinese medicine. And their 5-element thing is the water is the dream. That's the starting point. And then the plasma energy is the wood element. And then it turns into fire element, you know, where the peak of the summer, we've passed that now. And now we're heading into the late summer, and that's what we call the earth element, where things are coalescing again. The energy is doing this, and now it's coalescing, and you're getting fruits and squashes and seeds. And then the metal elements, where it all contracts finally and falls to the ground, and the seeds become the next cycle. It starts over again. And so the ending is a beginning. And so, you know, Armageddon, apocalypse, whatever, it's just an ending of a cycle. That's all it is. We're not going to get wiped out. And even if we do, then our spirits are going to move on to something else. So big deal. This is my favorite meme I found on the web. This Michael J. Fox, how I feel after 9 hours of fasting. He's looking at hand. I remember like 9 days, maybe, you know, like 9 hours is, you know, we all know. Shush, go to sleep and wake up. There's 9 hours there, you know. Oh, I just love that though. So I announced my cleanse to the group, and my intention for this cleanse was to change at least one person's life by enrolling them into a better version of themselves. And that's an old landmark word that I still like, you know, enroll somebody in a better version is enrollment. And here's a picture of me body surfing in Año Nuevo. A friend of mine was on the beach that day, and that was just a great fun. And then the avoid foods chart. So how am I going to break my cleanse? I'm probably going to have a raw custard tonight or tomorrow, which is raw egg, raw honey, raw butter. You could use avocado instead of butter if you're dairy intolerant. And then sometimes you can add raw cacao. You can double boiler that in. You could do lemon, lime. There's all kinds of fun stuff. It's a little raw custard from, I'm going to give Ajanus, I'm going to botch his last name, Von der Planet's credit for that raw custard recipe, who's now deceased. Yeah, bless you. You are a true hero, Ajanus. Thank you for all your work. I'm still talking on the screen. Maybe I should move this guy over now. Okay, I'm up in the heavens now watching everybody.
And when it's right, you just blend it.
Yeah, just a blender thing. Let's see. A little humor. I love hanging out on the epithelium. Keep out of the mucus on the PowerPoint. And finally, how can cleansing improve your health? Well, where do we go from here? Eat simply. Insert your name, Vito. So future Craig Vito. Keep your future person Vito. Remember we had a little humorous talk about this? I don't know if James is part of this, but yeah. So the short version of the story, I don't know, I'd love to point you with a little, you know, thing you could click and go back to that story instantly, but I don't know. But here's a short version of it is, I was having trouble with waking up in the morning feeling rotten because I was smoking too much pot and enjoying too much chocolate and fun the night before. So I realized night guy was screwing over morning guy. And I'd done this meditation prior to that where I was on a vacation and I was heading Southern California. And then the job of the meditation is to find yourself drumming back and finishing the vacation and asking the person who's finishing the vacation what's going to happen on the vacation. I call it past self, future self. And what a fascinating experiment and inquiry work was for 5 or 10 years. And so I developed a relationship with my future self in the morning by, hey, future self, you veto this decision. And it's like a self-muscle test. Like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Maybe one small square of chocolate versus the whole freaking bar. Maybe one hit of pot instead of 10, you know? Well, that's a little ridiculously exaggerated, but it makes a point of just checking in with our future self and saying, hey, you know, and it generally works. Applied kinesiology is a science. And there's a lot of quackery that's gone along with it. Believe me, I'm trained myself in muscle testing. There's some real quacks out there, but there's some real good ones too. So, and then when you're tempted, even if your future self thing isn't working, get support. I mean, the household we're in, is pretty supportive. I mean, the worst thing in the world would be to live in a house where everyone else is eating bonbons and you're trying to cleanse. I mean, it would be horrible. I've had wives with cancer where the husband's literally on the couch tempting them with ice cream and chocolate. It's like the husband didn't last very long. Obviously, the women who lived were like, get out of here, you fool. Because support's really, the number one survival thing with cancer is support, actually, and getting the anger out. So improved digestion is what I've seen with cleansing. Less waste and congestion in the way. Better absorption of nutrients, generally something that is a benefit of cleansing. Much better elimination. People talk about mental clarity. Often that's after a cleanse. Generally, if I see any of these signs that I'm mentioning right now of improvement after a cleanse, if someone comes in with them, then we just say, why don't you just do a 21-day cleanse and just follow this basic food chart here, take the supplements, and generally it works. I'll finish though. Cravings are often a lot better in food dependencies. Body and breath odors, because folks, if you got bad breath and it's every day, that means you've got a rotting stomach. And no breath mint's going to fix that until you cleanse all that waste out of your gastric mucosa. I'm not joking. So what we do in my practice, the fast way to fix that is with chlorophyll pearls. You use fat-soluble chlorophyll and it gets down there and just coats, generally just absorbs all the odor. That way the poor wives don't have to suffer with their husband's horse breath any longer. Too many steaks and not enough vegetables. In some cases, throw in the whiskey. In other cases, not so good. Less bloating, flatter stomach, less gas in general. The tongue is a mirror of what's going on in the intestines. There's usually less white, less coating on the tongue. Better appearance and clearer skin. I've got a few teenagers that got some skin issues that the parents have brought in, and there is no way you're going to get a 15-year-old to do a 3-week cleanse. I mean, it's not going to happen. And generally the eyes are more white. Like when the white of the eye is more white, then you're dealing with the sclera. It means your blood's more pure. And finally, there'll be another cleanse. If you missed this one, then on October 2nd, there'll be another one for my fall cleanse, right in the middle of our next CoBlab crisis, most likely. So you too can get your waste out of your body for $299 and join the group. So this is the page for it. And I'll be doing an email and another blog post about it. But if you like the blog, please share it. Here it is again. This is in the archives, unfortunately. It's in the November archives. And health doesn't have to be a monster, folks. See, that's my blog title. And there it is. So 30 minutes, not too bad. So is there any questions or anything? I don't know that, let's see if Andrew's still on here. He's still around, okay. I don't see any questions though.
I got one for you.
Okay, so we got question time on the, okay, Gary.
What's the kind of effective difference between an enema and this cleanse, this long-term cleanse process?
Oh, it's good.
I mean, is an enema kind of like a quick cleanse?
Oh, I like that question. So enemas are highly variable. There can actually be a nutritive enema. I'm dealing with a case right now of a kid that's vomiting, and in one case, an old wise woman just kept bathing the kid who couldn't eat in olive oil every day, and they would keep him alive. So an enema is like a quick start. Yeah, it definitely is. But if you do an enema and you feel worse, like my first 15, 20 enemas were almost an entire afternoon or an entire day in bed afterwards. I was that toxic. Remember, I had 18,000 allergy shots from age 5 to age 18, 10 in each arm every week for 13 years. I'm lucky to be alive. Allergies, hay fever, didn't help a bit. But darn, they made a lot of money on me. So yeah, my first set of enemas were horrendous, scary. And so that's how I judge someone, is like, it's called the provocation. So we provoke, give an enema, feel better, great, let's go deeper. They feel worse, we gotta take a few steps back and figure out what happened. Good example was, so what an enema really does though, is if you're going into a 3-day water fast, then you take 3 days to transition in, you might do an enema before you start your water fast, because that way you're all clean on the inside, going right into that water fast, and you're not absorbing fecal matter when you start your water fast. That's a good use of an enema there. I'm monitoring my dark thoughts right now, and it's like the more sludge develops here, the more sludge of the world causes dark thoughts that's implanted in my body. And so I'm on about during the cleanse, I went about 2 weeks, and I just forget it. Like, it was like, my goal was to do an enema 3 or 4 a week, and I just got busy in the fires. And so I have some gyroscope stuff that I meter, and one of them was dark thoughts, and then I can erase almost 99% of dark thoughts with a coffee enema. I'm on 48 hours still post-coital coffee enema bliss. And I poked fun at it in the, in my blog, because we were talking the other night, and it was 2 nights ago, last night before. And Jean said, "What are you gonna do tonight?" And or Bernadette, and I said, "I'm gonna spend the evening with my rectum." It just bubbled out to me. And I did. I was in there by an hour, 2 hours.
So, what
Right, so Gary, so cleansing, that's what we have foundation 3 and 4. So foundation 3 is detox, decongest, and transform waste. And then foundation 4 is drainage. So an enema is a direct drainage pathway. And I will tell you, I have kept more than a few people alive on coffee enemas who, once they stopped their coffee enemas, were dead within a month. It's a form of liver dialysis, I've determined. We were talking to somebody earlier about the bile and whatnot, but
Wow, that's interesting.
literally, I had this man, I don't want to mention who the family was because some of you might know them, but the father, me and my office mate, Megan at the time, were literally going up to his house and manually administering him enemas. He was infirm, mostly, and we're keeping him alive. And then it was $75 a pop, I was paying, it's like, you got to pay for it,
Yeah.
The family finally cut us off the money, and I said, "Good luck, you're on your own, do it yourself." And then he died. I put him in Dominican, and he died 5 days later. Dominican's where you go to die.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They killed him within 5 days.
They're good at it.
There's lots of stories, too many stories like that. So really, Gary, it's does it kind of satisfying answer to the question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh wait, Megan was next.
So, what about a
let's
shorter
get to-
cleanse than 21 days? Because I haven't done any of this stuff for a very super long time.
So the beauty of cleansing is, especially if we're starting out, is you can take 3 days is a good process. It should be, like I said, you don't want to climb Mount Everest. So
Right.
if 21 days feels like Mount Everest and you shorten it to, I had a woman that, she's been with me for 12 years, and she's exactly where I told her she'd be if she didn't listen to me. Hypertension, diabetes, I just love her to death, but yeah, she didn't listen. And didn't cleanse, kept eating Chinese takeout, kept telling her MSG and white rice is going to wreck her diabetes. And so, where was I going? But too into
The
Cheryl.
length of her
What about a
class.
shorter cleanse?
The shorter.
So I had her do a 3-day, I had her do a little 3-day, and that kind of jump started her.
Okay.
And there's 3-day, I like the 3-day kind of jump start. There's a week one, there's a 10-day one, there's a 2-week one. And there's different variations. There's an easy product too called SP Detox Balance. It gives you the cleansing supplement, the green food one, and the superfood shake. And I generally carry it. There was the chai one that was up there. I had a client that wanted to do a quick and easy. So that's a good quick and easy cleanse. If you do that with like veggies, then you can pretty much live on the shake. There's enough protein in it. That's why Standard Process makes that stuff.
Okay.
They make cleansing really easy, actually. And if you want to do a simple, just buying a bottle of SP Cleanse is, well, I'll bring a bottle out. It's the single most effective cleansing product for the price I have ever seen. It's only $25. It's like, I can't believe they're only charging $25 for this, but they have their own 1,000-acre farm. They grow a lot of the veggies there. But the first ingredient to me as a formulator was really interesting. It's juniper berry. Like, what, who, what, where, why? Juniper berry? What? But juniper is more of a kidney cleansing element, and it's warming. And there's artichoke leaf, and I need a light over here. Does anybody have a cell phone they can? Oh, here it is. I shine a light on this thing.
What was it about the artichoke?
Red clover. So juniper berry, red clover, Collinsonia root. That's called stone root. And that generally, Collinsonia root is a really interesting, it tones up all the blood vessels down in the pelvis. It's very specific for hemorrhoids. It's astringent. So I'm giving it to a kidney failure client right now because she's old and she's sagging. And so what do you want for a sagging energy? It's astringency, right? Hold up the sag. That's what, like a great facelift is just a strong green tea pack on the head. you're going to do a facelift and get all those wrinkles kind of straightened back, then green tea's great for that. Burdock root, apple pectin, barley grass juice, dandelion leaf, beets, Spanish black radishes, Oregon grape roots, cayenne pepper, that's fascinating, fenugreek, inositol, artichoke leaf, like I said, fennel, milk thistle, cordyceps, broccoli, kale, carrots, and sweet potato. A little carb in there. So, and there's 150 capsules and it's $25. And it's like, what? Why would I not do it? So I'll go through 5 or 6 bottles of this a year. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use that again, even though the cleanse is ending. I found that my energy was just better. I felt like my bowels were working better. My mind was clearer when I was on it. So I'm gonna go back on another bottle personally, because it's cost effective too for $25. Are you kidding me?
So are you doing the whole thing with the diet too?
I'm what people call the basic food chart is I was writing in the blog today, which I'll send you guys the link, that when people eat the way I eat, they will naturally start cleansing. Because my sponge is that, I've been in purer water than most people. Most people's values are just still too low.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people say I eat healthy all the time when they come into my practice. And I'm like, yeah, well, by the pathetically low standards you were taught, yes, you do. I'm sorry. But pathetically low standards are what we're looking at, And when the real standards are up there and yours are down here, what can I say? That's why you have cancer. You believe the brainwash, I just happened to stumble upon some great masters in my time, and their standards were way up there, and I was looking up at them going, oh God, really? I gotta go way up there? That's a lot of work. So yeah.
So Craig, the ingredients you just read, that
Oh wait, Monaco's next.
Oh, okay.
You brought up that flour is so awful. Is that all flours? Or
Yeah.
like quinoa flour, anything would be as
The worst flours in the world are the ones where you grind them and then you end up with these polyunsaturated fats that gets oxidized immediately. So flax seeds would be the worst flour to keep around for more than a few hours.
Right.
And working down from that, your nut flours are generally bad. Coconut flour you could probably keep around a little longer than other, nut flours. So your saturated fat flours. I just thought of was like bone meal flour. That would be a fascinating cookie.
insect flour.
Insect flour,
Insect
sure.
flour.
Grasshopper flour.
Those are the ones that they were really catching on,
Hmm.
and then they sort of disappeared from the news. But yeah, people swear by those.
Yeah.
Mucus flour.
So, let me finish though, because you're dealing with rancid oils. And so the evidence behind this was when the flour, here's the greatest conspiracy ever purported on the American people was the saturated fat cholesterol myth.
Yeah.
And there was a Swedish physician that wrote a book called The Cholesterol Myths about it, and he lost his practice because of it. But thank God he wrote it. And that was when the bread millers were starting to centralize bread milling about 1900. They started like centralizing milling, and then the flour was sitting in these bags for weeks and weeks and months. And so they make bread out of it, and it stunk. It was the germ oils, the wheat germ oil had gone rancid, because wheat germ oil is a super polyunsaturated fat. And so they're like, the main flour mills, how are we going to cover this up? So that's why they started. That's what happened. That's why white flour started. That's why it started, because people started rebelling and going, screw you, we're going back to our old ways, doing stone ground and fresh ground flour and whatnot. And then Harvey Wiley, the last true head of the FDA, I'm glad this is on camera. Harvey Wiley, the last true head of the FDA in 1905, passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. And of course he was opposed by the grain millers and whatnot, but the Pure Food and Drug Act basically stated that anything made of white flour and white sugar was cancer causing. And that was supposed to be the label in 1905-06.
Wow.
And the big grain lobbies though, just like now, he got destroyed, discredited. He was impeached in 1908, something like that, 1909. And then in 12 years later, he wrote a book called Crimes Against the Food Law.
What was his name again?
Harvey Wiley.
Harvey Wiley.
Yeah, you can look him up on Wikipedia and you'll hear the smear campaign, but he was one of the greatest men that ever lived. He was the last true head of the FDA. Ever since then, it's been all puppets, corporate interests. He was the last one who cared, and that act was never enforced. So flour products, they knew, everybody knew over 100 years ago that they were bad and toxic. So they had to spread the lie was protein, meat, Saturated fat, cholesterol causes problems. And then the famous Framingham heart study, they manipulated the data. I had 2 years of statistical analysis when I was studying to be architect. So in those horrifying 2 years of studying statistical analysis I learned that you could manipulate any data stream any way you wanted. It was a horrifying realization, like, oh my God, these people controlling it was just another rabbit hole, because I started realizing this government was a piece of junk back when I was 15 years old. And I just had more and more confirmations of that throughout my life. Like, my suspicions kept being validated. And this was another one, like, wow, this Framingham heart study is a total brainwash thing. Wow. But why is there the cholesterol going up? Turns out cholesterol is a backup antioxidant when you have rancidity occurring and inflammation in the blood vessels. So the cholesterol is coming in to buffer all those rancid flour fats. It was a natural byproduct of the poisoning of plus the margarine. They had to find a way that was the way they were covering up the flour and the margarine. Just like now they're covering up 5G with COVID. They're going to launch the school year, which they've already invested their 5G in some of the schools, and the kids are going to get hypoxia, then they're going to quarantine them, and then their pedophilia network's going to have a big orgasm. But it won't last for long because they're going to get caught, because they're stupid. Gene knows, these people aren't not very smart in the end.
I don't think that's actually going to happen.
I know I'm dramatic too, so I'm generally dramatic. So,
So the
did I answer your
quinoa
question?
Quinoa flour will go as bad and such. If you
The
grind
ones
it
that are
yourself,
lower in oil are generally preferred. But there's that flour company that I found the link for us from a client. So what I'm thinking about doing is get a bunch of us together and just buying the sprouted grain, because they sprout it for you. We can buy all the sprouted chickpeas and rices and everything we want, and then we should all go in on a flour grinder. We should do. I have a hand crank one, but we should go in. Okay, we got a flour grinder. See?
I just use my Vitamix.
Sure, you can use your Vitamix. It may not get as fine as you want, but you can sift it.
Mhm.
That's what the old Egyptians used to do. That's how the Egyptians made fine flour, was they just kept sifting it, And then they gave the fine flour to the, of course, the royalty. And the peasants had all scratched it. So we're still on film here, so I guess let's go to James's question.
Okay, when you're reading all
I'm gonna
the
turn this thing up.
ingredients, was that one in a box you're talking about? Okay. That's really the only appropriate question I have.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, because so each one of those ingredients, is a formula I'm looking at. Well, is this warming or cooling? Is this causing energy to go to the surface of the body or going into the middle of the body? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it going to the kidney? Is it going to the liver? So it's a good combination of intestinal scrubbing, the apopectin sort of taking stuff out. Then I think I mentioned there's inositol in there. That's an emulsifying agent. Artichoke leaf sort of acts that way too. And so you're emulsifying waste that, I don't have a good. Oh yeah, I do. I have the dudes resting on the epithelium in my blog. So it's that danger mucus one. There is this. There they are. I love hanging out on the epithelium. You got to come over here and see this. Restricted area. Keep off the mucus. So mucus used to be called toxic forms of mucus, which is now labeled as biofilm or intestinal plaque. Used to be called CATARRH, catarrh. And it was just this congealed, in Chinese medicine it's called congealed mucus, where you start with, you have clear mucus, and you have white mucus, then you have yellow, and this is all congealing. Yellow becomes orange becomes brown and green. And then it becomes more ropey, like taffy, right? And then if it goes further than that, it becomes a tumor or a lipoma. That's right. It's a consortium, a continuum of, so yellow and white's called cooling, and then when you start to see yellow mucus, then we know there's heat. The Chinese call that heat. So if you're eating mustard greens when you have a yellow tongue, that's inappropriate because mustard greens are heating. You give echinacea to someone with a yellow tongue when they're in that stage. If they've got clear or white mucus, then you would give them mustard greens or ginger or something to heat them up. And that's how I differentiate. It's called differential diagnosis. And in my modules, we'll be teaching that. But thanks, James. So it's a well-balanced formula in a nutshell. It's very well-balanced. It's not going to be too heating, too cooling, too constipating, too laxative. I know because I'm hypersensitive and doesn't do any of those things to me. Just bowels are just smooth, like bowel movement language, kind of like fine wine. Like it just slides right out. Smooth move. There we go. Any other questions? I'll turn off this recorder. I mean, still more questions. I'm just going to turn up the official. Well, I got some stuff.
Question about the watermelon seeds. Do you wait and dry them out first before you eat them, or when you eat them, when you're eating watermelon, does it have the same effect?
Just chew them.
You just chew them. There's something about soaking them in salt water and then throwing out the salt water because the salts are going to draw out some potential anti-nutrients that are inherent in seeds. Which is something about most nuts, seeds, grains, and beans need to be soaked 24 hours to deactivate the anti-nutrients. That's why you see so many vegans that they just don't look good because they're literally eating these unsoaked grains and beans and nuts and seeds, and they're drawing the nutrition right out of their body into their bowel movement.
And they're overweight because they're not getting enough nutrition, so they keep eating.
It's a weird cycle.
No, that makes sense.
I went the opposite way. I weighed, imagine me weighing 155 pounds.
Wow.
When I was a vegan, I weighed 100, and I was eating more food than you can ever imagine, and unable to gain weight. And you talk about a fungus gut. I mean, fungus among us. You know, I even had a stool sample, and it was like, you know, fungal markers was like, oh, this is horrifying. You know, like, and I want to be a nutrition teacher. You know, so I outed myself. Okay, folks, I'm going to turn this thing off now. Thank you very much. Bye.
Have you done your own sprouting watermelon seeds? Or do you just,
Wait, sprouting?
yeah,
Were you
that's
guys
what.
talking
Okay,
about
folks,
sprouting?
this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy signing off. Feeling clear with our group, and say bye, everybody.
Bye.
Signing off. Last day of the cleanse. We're still around, but October 2nd, next cleanse. October, falling into health cleanse, so you too can fall into your health.